Hey there, friends. You know that sting when someone judges you for your beliefs? Well, I recently had a client reject me because of my faith, and honestly, it really hurt. It got me thinking about how we often let our differences divide us, even in our families. And today we're going to talk about how we can turn those moments of hurt into opportunities for growth, and how embracing that open-mindedness can really transform your relationships and bring more joy into your parenting journey. Let's get to it. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. Welcome back, my friends, to episode number 165, When Beliefs Divide, My Journey Through Discrimination. Even just saying that word discrimination, I feel vulnerable and like I'm pulling that buzzword to get sympathy. Like I don't even love that word. It feels like a victim word. And yet it is what happened this week, and I wanted to speak to it. So I'm going to share that story with you for our episode today, and hopefully you can learn how to take your life to the next level from this experience that I had. Today, we're going to explore how to better respond to differences and build higher, even holier relationships, even when we've been rejected or have rejected others. Before we hop into that, I just want to remind you that we have some amazing courses that have come together so beautifully this last little while. It's been something that's been in the works for quite a long time, but recently it's just come together in a beautiful way. And every time I think about clients taking this course and getting that extra accountability and taking their life to the next level, I am truly humbled thinking about how many ripples that could create if people do the work and they invest in themselves in such small ways with such exponential results. So if you're looking to take your life to the next level, please go to fulfillmenttherapy.org and sign up for our courses that will be released January 1st. So what's coming with those 3 courses? The ones that are going to be released first are Find Your Focus, which is the first step in helping you create an online business and a podcast. And then the second course is Ignite Your Life. It's a personal growth course if you want to take your life to the next level. And then the third one is Mend Your Marriage to improve your relationship and deepen that connection and that intimacy. All right, let's hop back into the episode. Let's talk about discrimination. Not exactly discrimination. Actually, let's just put that word to the side because, like I said, it feels uncomfortable and maybe I need to explore that. Well, I want to share a story. This week, I had a client reach out to me quite a few times. We had a back and forth correspondence going for probably a couple weeks, maybe even longer. Questions she had, checking out my stuff, just really wanting to make sure it was a good fit. And she actually wanted help for both her and her husband. So after all of her research, she came to me and she said in our first session, she said, I've checked out your podcast, I've checked out your website, all of the things and everything that you say I was really excited to find you and excited to find someone that would work for both me and my husband. Anyways, I had answered a lot of her questions, was kind of familiar with her at this point, but one of her questions was about faith. And I told her I just wanted to talk about that in person since it's such a charged conversation. And I know if people don't see you face to face, they can kind of shut down when it comes to faith. But it was something that was important to her. She brought it up again in our session. And what was a challenge is she did not tell me what her faith was and what she was looking for. Now, I have a lot of clients that come to me and do that, and that's completely fine to me. Like, I'm okay with people seeking to find therapists that align with their values because they feel safer and they can build that therapeutic relationship faster. But in this case, she wasn't telling me what her faith was. She did tell me, but she led with wanting to know what mine was. And the way that she was asking the questions and how she went about it, it's, how do I say, it caused my spidey sense to tingle. And I actually had a conversation with my husband like a week before. And I said, when people phrase things like that, it's usually because they have some stereotypes or they have some with certain faiths or people or whatever that is. Anyway, I wasn't sure. I just kept moving forward. And she told me her faith. And then I proceeded to tell her mine. Her countenance completely changed. She just totally shut down. And I just said, you know what? I understand if you need some time to think about it. If you're looking for somebody that is your own faith or whatever it is, I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. And I just said, whatever you'd like to do, I can put aside my ego and whatever is best for you and your husband. Well, typically that's enough as people see that you're open-minded and you're willing to do whatever they need in session. And in this case, she just said, yeah, I don't know that I can do this. And we ended session early, right then, actually. And she has not reached out to me since. Now, the way that it was worded and the way that it was handled, I could be wrong here because I cannot read her mind. But the information that I have to go on is that she was not rejecting me because I wasn't her faith. She was rejecting me because I had my faith, which she did not believe in or agree with. Now, I'm not going to say which faith it is, but this is, for whatever reason, historically, I don't completely understand, but there is a faith that is very critical towards my faith. And as many of you know, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And maybe this is an opportunity for me to understand and grow and improve this situation. But afterwards, I found myself being frustrated and honestly hurt. Like, I kept thinking, like, how could I have responded to that to like help her understand that that was not okay? And those kinds of things that I could tell that in that moment, actually, maybe my ego was more affected than I realized. And I really do pride myself on trying to be open-minded, understanding different perspectives, all of those things. But when you feel rejected, it stings. And in that moment, I remembered the quote that I love that I've shared several times. When you get reactive, get curious. You have a wound that is waiting to be healed. And that's by Mark Groves. And I think about that a lot. Like, in this moment, I know that my husband probably would have been like intrigued by it and would have jumped into a conversation and challenged them, where I somewhat just shut down. I don't think the client could see that, but in that moment I was like, if I'm going to be discriminated against, this is not a client that I want to work with. Whereas he would never have thought that at all. Like, he loves those kinds of situations where I'm like, you can't change somebody's opinion if they're already shut down. And it wasn't the time. I could tell from her countenance or her vibe that she wasn't in a place to hear very much in that moment. And since it was a first session, there wasn't an opportunity to open hearts or minds because we didn't have that therapeutic relationship yet. Okay, now how is this all being tied into this episode today? Well, I will tell you. Have you ever heard of confirmation bias? This is when we seek information that aligns with our beliefs and we ignore challenging perspectives. So there was some sort of confirmation bias, and I'll explain that more in a little bit, but this limits our understanding and our growth, and it creates almost like this echo chamber where diverse ideas are excluded. Now, when I was watching her, I actually did really feel for her because I could see how intensely she was feeling about another belief system and how she was very closed off to it. And I remember when I started my graduate program, I felt that way about many of my cohort members. And it was a very uncomfortable environment. And often I was ostracized or not treated very kindly. That being said, there are many times that I was treated very well. And I think we all grew in our patience and understanding of different perspectives, but it was uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like constant disapproval and animosity for my beliefs throughout my program, even if it was like very subtle, which it often was. So the reason that I bring up that experience with grad school is I saw that in her too. Like not only were they closed-minded, but I also was closed-minded in a lot of ways because my political beliefs were so different than them, as well as my religious beliefs. And that made it hard for us to find this common ground. F. Scott Fitzgerald said, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." So are you able to hold two opposed ideas? Like, can you consider and see goodness in two different perspectives? Like, or are you all Republican or all Democratic and really struggled to see the good in another side, or Christian versus non-Christian? And if you say that you are totally open-minded, I challenge you to ask others about that. Because when I'm being completely honest with myself, there are many times that I am not. And if you cannot say that, then that likely indicates that you are not as open-minded as you believe. Now let's talk about cultivating that intellectual humility. I've never really thought about that phrase, intellectual humility, but I love that. So intellectual humility is recognizing that our knowledge is limited. Are we open to learning from others, even if their thoughts and ideas look very different than our own? So when we're able to have that intellectual humility, we have that curiosity and that respect, and that allows for those richer conversations and those deeper connections. I often think about my aunt when I think about these things, and she talks to you as if she has completely similar perspectives because she's so curious and respectful and loving and has this understanding and this desire to learn from you. It's just beautiful. And you don't find out till way later that she has completely different beliefs or views on things. But you can tell, even like instead of feeling like deceived, you feel flattered that she cares so much because you know that she really values your perspective. And I want to be just like her. It's so beautiful. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." So like in the case of my aunt, she's able to entertain those thoughts or be open to these things without necessarily taking it on for herself, but still not being afraid to hear those other perspectives. Are we able to do the same when it comes to religious perspectives? I have another quick story I wasn't planning on sharing, but I just recently was working with a client and she's considering leaving her faith, which is actually my faith too. And we were talking about that. And in the case of this client, am I able to hear her thoughts and her fears and just listen to her and validate her rather than be so afraid that it's going to affect me that I shut her down and I invalidate her? My heart just goes out to her because there's so many people that are struggling in their faith, whatever faith it might be. And what they really need from people is just their understanding and their compassion, even in those moments where they're almost like this teenager, where they're rebellious and angry and hurt and resentful. Like there is space to respond to them with love and acceptance and not get so prickly. Again, are we activated? Can we get curious? Are we activated because it stirs something within us, like maybe our own doubts, our own fears, our own insecurities? Or can we just allow there to be that space for acceptance and love and patience? Now, in that situation, that's a little bit different than my other story of that client that rejected me because of my faith, not because I was not of hers, but because I was something that she did not approve of, that she did not want. And she wasn't going to entertain the idea of having a therapist with a different perspective because it felt threatening to her. Maybe it felt unsafe. And again, can I practice that open-mindedness and recognize there's space for her to be like that? Like maybe that's just her journey. And right now she's not ready because of things that have happened in her life. And it feels unsafe to be with a therapist with that particular faith for whatever reason that I don't even know about. Like, who knows, right? We can give others that grace even if we don't understand and even if it initially stings at first. Let's talk about the power of diverse perspectives. When we entertain different viewpoints and discuss them or learn about them, it really does enrich our understanding and fosters empathy. There's this amazing woman that I really admire named Sherry Dew, and she talked about how she reads multiple news sources every day to have this more balanced worldview. And she challenged us to be careful that we are not getting validation and reinforcement from just one perspective. Like maybe everything that we see on our feed is the stuff that we already resonate with. It's not anything contrary to our beliefs. So we're not ever challenged in our thinking because it reinforces all the things that we already think. And that can be very dangerous and create greater division and greater closed-mindedness. 93% of Americans desire less division. I would honestly say it's about 100, but whatever. But they want that unity and that understanding. So when we shift our focus from differences to instead shared values, that really can foster that connection and that harmony that we are seeking. There's this quote, I'm going to probably butcher it, but I love this movie, Contact. It's older now, but she said, this guy was saying, oh, that's not how the world is. And she responded, funny, I thought the world is what we make it. So if you don't want a divided world, then maybe make it what you want it. How do you respond to different perspectives politically or religiously? How inclusive are you? How much do you get out there to surround yourself with different perspectives? I know I don't nearly enough. And I want to change that, especially when I think about that situation with this client that essentially fired me because of my beliefs. I don't want someone else to experience that discrimination or that rejection for something because of who they are and because of what they value, especially when it's not hurting others, which is why I think that's so interesting, because in this situation, we're both Christians. We both have the same core values and believe in Jesus Christ, and he is the great unifier, and he calls his followers friends. And when I think about that, there's actually recently we had a conference in our church, and it's every 6 months, a general conference. And one of the speakers, David L. Buckner, he talked about how the Savior's group of apostles was very diverse, so different. And he got so much backlash from everyone, but especially his followers. Like, why them? Why them? Like, no, it's only supposed to be these types of people that look this way, that are similar in ways that make us comfortable. Well, Christ wasn't about making us comfortable. He was about challenging us and helping us be more open-minded and more unified and inclusive. He said, be one, and if ye are not one, ye are not mine. That's so beautiful. And again, I think about this client. I hope I'm not harping on her too much. It's just the concepts that I want to share about. But in that moment, was she one? Were we able to come together with our commonalities, or are we focusing on one of our differences? Like she mentioned one little doctrinal point that really bothered her. And I'm not going to change that perspective, nor do I even want to, but I want to focus on where we can stand. But I want to focus on how we have common ground. So let's talk about building those higher and holier relationships, even like in our families, especially in our families, right? We can seek those opportunities to unite and create a sense of belonging. There are so many perspectives in families, as you all know, like very different ways of living and belief systems that at first was challenging for me when I was more rigid or black and white in my thinking. And it has been so nice to set that down and just recognize I don't need to change people. I just need to love people. And I can let go of a lot of those fears and simply have conversations with my family members about that instead of judging and I know there's space for righteous judgment if it keeps us safe, but in situations where we can be inclusive and loving instead of pushing family away because of their differences. And that is what will bring greater joy and fulfillment in our families. So Elder Buckner, in his talk, he shared an experience where he met with the New York City Commission of Religious Leaders. And this was a whole group that really came together in unity despite their massive diversity during COVID and how beautiful that was. And I was actually talking to the same client about how much I love interfaith things. Like I would love to have as many interfaith podcast guests on this episode talking about how they create unity in their communities and how they navigate those differences. I would love that. So if you know of anybody that would like to be on the show, please reach out to me. You can email the team at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org because I want to create more of that unity in our communities and a greater understanding. Elder David Buckner said this: there's always much more that unites us than divides us. And I believe that. I see that regularly in my family. All of my siblings have very different ways of living and belief systems and politics that we have had to find more and more of that common ground instead of the things that divide us. And it is very easy to feel that division sometimes, to feel like I am less than, to feel like I don't fit in anymore because I'm so different than my siblings. And yet, I don't believe that's what Christ would want, or the mentors that I love a lot. Like, are we able to find that common ground and let go of that hurt and that frustration and that feeling of misunderstanding? And are we willing to stand up for ourselves or gently communicate and remind, maybe not so gently sometimes, but of those opportunities, of those situations where maybe we didn't feel understood or that there was closed-mindedness around an issue. Like that is what's going to make us stronger and better and more open-minded instead of just avoiding those situations altogether. Let's talk about creating a sense of belonging. Elder Buckner said this in his talk. I thought it was so funny. He said, "My father often reminded me that simply sitting in a pew on Sunday doesn't make you a good Christian any more than sleeping in a garage makes you a car." I had laughed about that. And it's so true. Like we have judgments both ways. Like, oh, they go to church, so they are a good Christian. Instead of, how am I living day to day? How much do I create unity in my life and in my family life? How closed-minded am I? This was triggering to me. Why was it triggering? Why was I activated? What more can I do to be Christ-like, to be more open-minded, to make sure that I am not perpetuating that division around me so others don't feel the way that I felt? Now let's apply this very briefly to parenting. You can model that respectful disagreement with grace in conflict. Show your kids that there's space for you to be different, to have different perspectives, and that's okay. You can introduce your kids to various cultures and beliefs and promote that inclusivity. That's why I love having foreign exchange students. That's why I love having a diverse team. It reminds me that, hey, we are not all the same, and that is great. That brings such a more well-rounded perspective, and likely why a perfect being like Christ chose such a diverse team, because we need that to challenge our viewpoints. So we can teach those critical thinking skills so that we can foster those varying viewpoints in a beautiful way and capitalizing on them. So just in conclusion today, I want to remind you of a few points. Seek to embrace that open-mindedness so that you can take your personal growth to the next level. And you can do that by creating more inclusive family environments, by saying uplifting and kind things about others, especially around your children, and really believing them, and then challenging your judgments when you are exposed to them. Actually, a funny story about that very quickly is when I was telling my husband about this later in the day, after work that night, I said, yeah, this particular religion is just so hard on our faith, and I don't know why. And he said, wait, are you judging their faith? And I just glared at him, and then I thought, yes, I probably am. Also, please remember to actively seek diversity and model those important values for our kids. Remember to be one. Christ often said, ye are my friends. Like, he loved everyone, regardless if they were the wrong gender according to the culture, or they were on the wrong career path, or they had a history that he didn't agree with. Like, he let go of all of that, and he included people. So again, when you get reactive, get curious. Is there something more you can do to create unity and let go of that judgment? It is not easy to face our shadows, but often when we feel activated, they're begging to be healed because there's something more that we can do. And in this case with my client, I recognize that I can honor people's paths and their ability to engage. And sometimes they reject me, and sometimes they hurt me. And that can be about them and their side of the street. And for my side of the street, I can remember how that feels, and I can explore why it is so triggering, and I can seek to teach my kids greater unity. Thank you, my friends, for listening today to this episode and discussing a subject that is uncomfortable, that victim-laced topic of discrimination. It sometimes feels confusing and uncomfortable to talk about. We've probably all experienced it in one way or another, whether it's through our faith or our skin color or our gender or whatever it is. Chances are high that you've probably experienced it in some way, shape, or form. And hopefully you've given others the benefit of the doubt, recognizing we're all on our journey to growth and doing our own deep work, but we have the ability to let go. Thank you again, my friends, for listening. I will see you back here next week. And don't forget to check out fulfillmenttherapy.org to connect with us in any way, or check out the show notes to find us in all the places, whether that's on social media, Instagram, Facebook, really everywhere. We're starting to release more YouTube videos. We're going to be doing a lot of different things out there. We're on Pinterest, all the places. So check that out if you want to find us. Let us know if we can help you in any way. You can contact us on our website or email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.com. Take care, my friends. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.